The graduation party was supposed to be a celebration. After 4 years of computer science at Stanford, I'd graduated summa cum laude with job offers from 3 major tech companies. But standing in the backyard of the house where I'd lived for 8 years, watching my stepfamily celebrate my departure more than my achievement, I realized this party wasn't about my success. It was about their freedom. "Well, Alex," my stepmom Patricia said loudly enough for all the neighbors to hear, "I guess this is goodbye." I looked up from the barbecue where I'd been quietly grilling burgers for everyone else. "Goodbye. Oh, didn't your father tell you?" Patricia's smile was sharp as a knife. "We've decided to downsize. This house is really too big for just the 3 of us and frankly too expensive to maintain with someone who doesn't contribute to the household." My dad, who'd been married to Patricia for 8 years, nodded uncomfortably. He'd never been good at confrontation, which is probably why he'd let Patricia make most of the family decisions since they'd gotten together when I was 14. "Downsize to where?" I asked. "Oh, we're not downsizing," my stepsister Brittany chimed in from her lounge chair by the pool. "We're upgrading. Dad got a promotion and we're moving to that new development in Westfield. You know, the one with the golf course. The houses there start at $800,000, my stepbrother Kyle added, not looking up from his phone. "Way too nice for someone who's going to be living on an entry-level salary." The neighbors, our neighbors, people I'd known for 8 years, laughed politely at Kyle's joke. Mrs. Henderson from next door actually nodded approvingly. "It's probably for the best," Patricia continued, warming to her audience. "Alex has always been a bit different from the rest of us. It's time for him to learn to stand on his own 2 feet. But this is my home," I said quietly. "Your home." Patricia's laugh was like breaking glass. "Sweetheart, this is our home. You've been a guest here and now it's time for you to find your own place." What Patricia didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I hadn't exactly been struggling financially during college. While they thought I was just another broke student living off Dad's generosity, I'd actually been building something extraordinary. It started sophomore year when I developed a mobile app for tracking campus dining hall wait times. Nothing fancy, just a simple interface that helped students avoid crowds. But when I showed it to my computer science professor, he suggested I patent the underlying queue prediction algorithm. That algorithm caught the attention of a logistics company, who licensed it for $2.3 million. Suddenly I wasn't broke anymore. But I was smart enough to keep quiet about it. I used that money to start developing more sophisticated logistics software, working with a team of graduate students I hired as contractors. Within 2 years, we'd created a supply chain optimization platform that revolutionized how retail companies manage their inventory. When Amazon offered to buy the platform for $47 million, I was 21 years old and secretly one of the youngest millionaires in Silicon Valley. But to my family, I was still just Alex, the quiet stepson who spent too much time on his computer. I'd been watching the house situation carefully through my lawyers. Dad and Patricia had been struggling financially for months. Dad's promotion, Patricia mentioned, was actually a lateral move with a small raise, and they'd been borrowing against the house to maintain their lifestyle. 3 months ago, when the bank started foreclosure proceedings, a mysterious buyer had stepped in with a cash offer above market value. That buyer was Phoenix Holdings LLC, one of my shell companies. Last month the sale had closed. Phoenix Holdings, which is to say I now own 2847 Oakwood Drive, the house where I'd lived since I was 14. "When are you planning to move?" I asked, taking another burger off the grill. 2 weeks, Patricia said. "We close on the new house next Friday." "That's cutting it close." "Oh, we'll be fine. The new owners are being very accommodating about timing." I smiled. "That's nice of them." "Yes, well, some people understand what it's like to deal with family transitions." Kyle stood up from his lounge chair, stretching dramatically. "I can't wait to have my own bathroom again. No more sharing with the computer nerd. And I'll finally have a walk-in closet," Brittany added. "This place is so outdated." Dad hadn't said much during this conversation, which was typical. He'd learned long ago that it was easier to let Patricia make decisions than to argue with her. But he looked uncomfortable with how public this humiliation was becoming. "Alex," he said quietly, "we should probably talk privately about your living arrangements." "What's to discuss?" Patricia interrupted. "He's 22 years old, he has a college degree, he has a job lined up. It's time for him to be independent." "I understand," I said. "Independence is important." "Exactly." Patricia beamed as if I'd finally gotten the point. "You'll thank us for this someday." Nothing builds character like having to make it on your own. Mrs. Henderson from next door nodded again. Patricia's absolutely right. These kids today expect everything handed to them. Some of us work for what we have, Kyle said, though he'd never held a job longer than 3 months. Some of us understand the value of family, Brittany added, though she'd made it clear for years that she didn't consider me real family. I continued grilling burgers and listening to my stepfamily explain to the neighbors why I deserved to be kicked out. The irony was perfect. They were celebrating their escape from me while standing in my backyard, eating food I'd bought, planning to move to a house they could only afford because I'd bought their current one. Where will you go? Mrs. Henderson asked me with what sounded like genuine concern. I'll figure something out, I said. Maybe you can find a nice apartment, Patricia suggested. Something small and affordable. Good for a starter place. That sounds perfect. You're taking this very well, Dad said, looking surprised. What's the point in fighting it? I shrugged. You've made your decision. See, Patricia said to the crowd. I told you Alex was mature enough to handle this. He understands that this is what's best for everyone. After the party ended and the neighbors went home, I helped clean up the backyard while my stepfamily went inside to continue planning their move. As I was putting away the lawn chairs, my phone buzzed with a text from my lawyer. Eviction notices ready for delivery. Still want them served tomorrow? I typed back, yes. First thing in the morning. Any special instructions? Make sure Patricia signs for hers personally. The next morning I was up early working in my room when I heard the doorbell ring. Through my window I could see a man in a suit standing on the front porch with a clipboard and several envelopes. Patricia Reynolds? I heard him ask when Patricia answered the door. Yes. I have some documents for you to sign. I made my way downstairs quietly, positioning myself where I could see the front door but remain unnoticed. Patricia was scanning the documents with growing confusion. I don't understand. This says eviction notice. There must be some mistake. No mistake, ma'am. You've been served notice to vacate the premises within 30 days. That's impossible. We own this house. Actually, ma'am, according to county records, this property is owned by Phoenix Holdings LLC. You've been residing here without a valid lease agreement. Dad appeared at the door looking confused. What's going on? Some crazy person is trying to evict us from our own house, Patricia said, waving the papers. The process server consulted his clipboard. Are you Robert Reynolds? Yes. I have documents for you as well. Dad took his envelope and opened it, his face growing pale as he read. This says the house was sold 3 months ago. That's correct, sir. But we didn't sell. According to the bank records, the property was in foreclosure. Phoenix Holdings purchased it through the foreclosure auction. Patricia's voice rose to a shriek. That's impossible. We would have known. Ma'am, foreclosure notices are sent by certified mail. They're also published in the legal notices section of the local newspaper. I could see the realization dawning on Dad's face. He'd probably been throwing away those certified letters for months, not wanting to deal with bad news. There has to be something we can do, Patricia said desperately. You can contact Phoenix Holdings directly. Their information is on the notice. What's their phone number? I'm not authorized to provide that information. You'll need to contact them through their legal representatives. After the process server left, I could hear Patricia and Dad arguing in hushed, frantic tones. Within an hour they were making phone calls, trying to reach Phoenix Holdings, trying to understand how they'd lost their house without knowing it. I went downstairs to find them in the kitchen, surrounded by paperwork and phones. Alex. Patricia looked up desperately. Thank God. We need your help. What's wrong? Someone stole our house. Can you believe it? Some company bought it without telling us. That's terrible. We're trying to reach the owners, but they're hiding behind lawyers and shell companies. Your generation is good with computers. Can you help us track them down? I sat down at the kitchen table and looked at the eviction notice. Phoenix Holdings LLC. I can do some research. I pulled out my laptop and made a show of searching for information, typing random queries and clicking through websites. Anything? Dad asked anxiously. It's complicated. Phoenix Holdings appears to be owned by another company, which is owned by another company. It's a pretty sophisticated corporate structure. Can you find out who's really behind it? I can try, but it might take a while. Patricia was pacing the kitchen like a caged animal. This is insane. You can't just steal someone's house. Actually, I said, still typing, it looks like they didn't steal it. The property was legally purchased through a foreclosure auction. What foreclosure auction? According to these records, you missed several mortgage payments and the bank initiated foreclosure proceedings 4 months ago. Dad's face went ashen. I thought we had more time. You knew about this? Patricia spun around to face him. I was handling it. I thought I could catch up on the payments. You thought? You thought. Kyle and Brittany appeared in the kitchen, drawn by their mother's screaming. What's all the yelling about? Kyle asked. Your stepfather lost our house. Patricia shouted. What do you mean lost our house? Dad slumped into a chair. I fell behind on the mortgage payments. The bank foreclosed. Someone else bought it. Where are we supposed to live? Brittany demanded. I don't know. What about the new house in Westfield? We can't close on that without selling this one first. And we can't sell this one because we don't own it anymore. The full scope of their situation was starting to sink in. They'd lost their current house, couldn't afford the new one, and had exactly 30 days to figure out where to go. There has to be something we can do, Patricia said desperately. We can fight this in court. With what money? Dad asked. Legal fees would cost more than we have. Maybe we can negotiate with the new owners, Kyle suggested. Offer to rent it back or something. How do we even contact them? Brittany asked. I looked up from my laptop. I found something. Phoenix Holdings is managed by a law firm downtown. Harrison, Wells and Associates. Patricia grabbed her phone. I'm calling them right now. I listened as Patricia tried to explain their situation to various receptionists and paralegals, getting passed from person to person without reaching anyone who could actually help. They keep saying the owners don't want direct contact, she finally said, hanging up in frustration. Everything has to go through the lawyers. What did the lawyers say? They said Phoenix Holdings might consider a rental agreement, but the family would need to apply like any other tenants. Apply to rent our own house? Apparently. Dad was now reading through the foreclosure paperwork, his face growing more haggard with each page. It's all legal, he said quietly. Everything was done by the book. We're lucky the new owners are even considering letting us stay. Lucky? Patricia's voice cracked. We're supposed to feel lucky that strangers are letting us rent our own home? It's not our home anymore, Dad said. It hasn't been for months. I cleared my throat. There might be something else. Everyone turned to look at me. I've been doing some research on Phoenix Holdings. They seem to specialize in helping families in financial distress. Maybe this isn't as hostile as it seems. What do you mean? Think about it. They could have evicted you immediately, but they're giving you 30 days. They're open to a rental agreement. Maybe they bought the house specifically to help you. Patricia stared at me. Help us. By stealing our house. By saving it from foreclosure. If they hadn't bought it, the bank would have auctioned it to the highest bidder, and you definitely wouldn't have any chance to stay. Dad was nodding slowly. Alex might be right. This could have been much worse. So what do we do? Apply to rent it back, I guess. See what they offer. I spent the rest of the day helping my family draft a rental application to Phoenix Holdings. Through my lawyers, I reviewed their application and financial information, then crafted a response that would give them exactly what they deserved. 3 days later, the response came back. Patricia read it aloud to the family. Phoenix Holdings LLC is pleased to offer the Reynolds family a lease agreement for 2847 Oakwood Drive. Monthly rent will be $4,200, with first month's rent and security deposit due upon signing. $4,200? Kyle's voice cracked. That's more than twice what our mortgage payment was. It's market rate for this neighborhood, Dad said quietly. How are we supposed to afford that? We'll have to make some changes. Patricia continued reading. The lease agreement includes the following conditions. Property must be maintained in excellent condition. No modifications to the house without written permission. All utilities are tenant responsibility. Lease term is month to month, renewable at landlord's discretion. Month to month? Brittany asked. That means they can kick us out anytime? It also means we can leave anytime, Dad pointed out. Where would we go? I don't know. Patricia flipped to the second page. There's more. Phoenix Holdings reserves the right to show the property to potential buyers with 24-hour notice. Tenants acknowledge that this is a temporary arrangement and should plan accordingly for alternative housing. The room fell silent as the reality sank in. They'd gone from homeowners to month-to-month tenants in their own house, paying double what they used to pay with no security and no control over their living situation. "We don't have much choice," Dad finally said. "What about Alex?" Brittany asked suddenly. "If we're paying $4,200 a month, we can't afford to support him too." All eyes turned to me. I'd been so quiet during this crisis that they'd almost forgotten I was being kicked out. "Actually," I said, "I have some good news about that." "What kind of good news?" "I found an apartment. I can move out this weekend." "Where?" "Downtown. It's a nice place and I can afford it with my new job." Patricia looked relieved. "That's wonderful. Everything is working out. There is one small thing though." "What?" "My new landlord wants references. Since I've been living here for 8 years, I was hoping you could provide a reference about what kind of tenant I am." "Of course," Patricia said quickly. "What do they need to know?" "Just the basics. That I'm clean, quiet, responsible. That I always paid my share of expenses on time." "Your share of expenses?" Dad looked confused. "You know, rent, utilities, my portion of household costs." "Alex," Dad said slowly, "you never paid rent. You were family." "Oh." I looked genuinely surprised. "I guess my new landlord will think that's strange." "Why would they think it's strange?" "Well, they're going to want to see a history of rental payments. They'll think it's weird that a 22-year-old has never paid rent anywhere." Patricia was starting to look uncomfortable. "Can't you just explain that you were living with family?" "I tried that. They said family should still charge something even if it's just nominal. They're worried that someone who's never paid rent might not be responsible about monthly payments." The irony was perfect. The family that was kicking me out for not contributing to household expenses had never actually asked me to contribute to household expenses. "What do you need from us?" Dad asked. "A letter saying that I paid $800 a month in rent for the past 4 years, and that I was always on time with payments." "But that's not true," Kyle pointed out. "I know. But if you don't mind writing it anyway, it would really help me out." Dad and Patricia exchanged glances. They were about to become tenants themselves, and they needed my help with computer research and paperwork. The last thing they wanted was to make me angry. "Of course we can write that letter," Patricia said quickly. "Thanks. I really appreciate it." What they didn't know was that my new landlord was also Phoenix Holdings LLC. The reference letter they were writing was going directly to my own company, where it would be filed away as evidence of their willingness to lie when it served their interests. I moved out that weekend telling them I was going to a downtown apartment. In reality, I moved into a penthouse in the city center that I'd bought 6 months earlier. It was a temporary arrangement while I decided what to do with the house on Oakwood Drive. Over the next few months, I watched my former family struggle with their new reality. The $4,200 monthly rent was stretching their budget to the breaking point. Dad had to take a second job driving for a rideshare company. Patricia went back to work as a retail manager. Kyle and Brittany both had to get part-time jobs to help with expenses. For the first time in their lives, they were learning what it felt like to have financial pressure, to worry about making rent, to budget for basic necessities. Through my property management company, I received regular reports on the house. They were taking excellent care of it, better care than they'd ever taken when they owned it. Knowing they could be evicted at any time had made them appreciate what they had. 6 months after I moved out, I decided it was time for the next phase of my plan. I had my lawyer send a letter to the Reynolds family. Phoenix Holdings LLC has decided to sell the property at 2847 Oakwood Drive. As current tenants, you have the right of first refusal to purchase the property at market value. Current market value has been assessed at $895,000. Patricia called me immediately, crying. "Alex, they want to sell the house. $895,000. We don't have that kind of money." "That's terrible," I said. "We'll have to move out. But we can't afford to buy anything else in this market. We'll have to rent some apartment somewhere." "Maybe that's not such a bad thing." "How can you say that? This is our home." "Patricia, you told me 8 months ago that this house was too good for someone like me. Maybe it's too good."